Yeah, and I could suggest another play acting thing is, you know, the Pope is shielded even from journalists. You know, they have these little set pieces like on the plane flying out to Australia for World Youth Day, but the Pope would never sit down with the journalists and have a frank conversation like we're having. You know, they're staged questions. You know, put the questions in writing and His Holiness will respond on the plane or something.
Well, so, I think they tried that with the Pope, John Paul, on the airplane. They tried to set up something about the pedophilia question with sexual abuse with the clergy and so forth, and I think they've tried it with Benedict.
Yeah,
but it's very, very guarded. I mean, when I read that he talked to some of the victims, I've had a profession in the psychological world, and it's very difficult to get someone who's been victimized to talk to you.
Yeah.
I mean, and particularly if the world is watching and the cameras are on, I don't think people are going to get into that kind of intimacy. Huh?
Yeah, yeah. So, when we get to the end of your series, what are you hoping to achieve? Is it to spark a conversation? You have no fixed answers as to what you think should. We've got the birds have come to join us here. You see the birds we have in this.
Beautiful, aren't they?
Water.
Yeah. And they've got no water.
Do you want me to go and get some water?
No, don't get some water.
Eh?
But can you just take a quick shot of them right now?
You remember the last image I gave was the man standing in the railway station with a ticket to nowhere?
Yep.
The abandoned railway station. Well, yeah, I have no idea of exactly where we're going with sacraments. I think that's up to the people. The sacraments are for people, and they're the links that offer them some connection to their concept of God, and I think the people are going to have to begin to recognize these. And what makes a sign sacred is the way that people approach it. I mean, I don't think it's made sacred because somebody puts on some robes and a stole and makes a sign of the cross over it. I don't think that's something that's sacred.
Yep.
I think the people will make it sacred. Sacred meaning something special for them. Huh?
Yeah, but the majority of the people don't seem to have a say today. If somebody comes along and says, let's adapt the sacrament, like we've had the liturgies in our native tongues, in our local languages, and already people are revolting against that and say, no, we've got to take it back to Latin. And it seems to me that every time somebody wants to make something more meaningful for the population at large, there is this element of the thought police or the temple police will stand up. Oh, you can't say that. It is no longer holy. It is no longer sacred.
Well, Brian, that's like the man who said, if Latin was good enough for Jesus at the Last Supper, it's good enough for me. I mean, how do you deal with that kind of person? I mean, their ignorance is pathetic. But I don't think that ignorance is in young people. Richard McBrien from Notre Dame University, I heard him talk a few months ago, and he was talking about the hunger of young people to find some kind of meaningfulness, some kind of spirituality that works for them.
Yeah.
And that they're crowding into his classes at Notre Dame and asking all kinds of questions, which is in contrast to, say, the way young people were raised, say, before Vatican II, and probably much after, too, that, if they asked a question, they were told, keep quiet, don't rock the boat, they were seen as impudent, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So are you an optimist or a pessimist as to where we're going with all this?
Human nature is a wonderful experience, and human beings will, if the church doesn't, the church authorities, I don't think, are capable of inventing the future. I think the young people will invent it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're going to survive. Human beings are survivors, and I think spirituality is built right into creation, and I think they'll do well with it. You know, what it'll be like. I have these two sons of mine, huh? They're both graduates of Cal Berkeley, you know, a very prestigious advanced school, okay? You know, university, okay? They have a spirituality, and yet they're not at all connected to the seven sacraments. They've never been baptized. They know nothing about that sacramental system from the years of Trent. But do they have things that they hold sacred? I have a sense that my son, whose wife is now pregnant, I see him as holding her as some sacred symbol, and I imagine that baby is going to be very sacred to him.
Right.
Huh?
Yeah. So that's what you're getting at in your last commentary. All right, listen, I'll wrap this up because I don't want to make it too long. People don't like long interviews. We've been sitting there for 2-3 hours at a time just talking and talking and talking. I don't think we could videotape that and put it on Catholica. They'd send them all to sleep. But for the rest of your trip, on Friday, tomorrow, you're flying off to Perth for 3 days, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you come back from Perth, and then you're flying.
No. I go from Perth to Cairns.
Oh, so
and I hope to get into some study of the Aboriginal people and the history of Australia. You know, as far back as I can go. That time will be a kind of an investigation of Australia's history, and looking at the Great Barrier Reef. And then I'll come back to Sydney and I'll be ready to go home.
Right. But
So-
you've enjoyed your trip so far, have you?
Oh yeah,
Except that you haven't seen much of the sights. It's mainly been talking to us and the people
Brian,
up at Catholica.
this around us here is not that much different from my native California.
Right.
I mean, they're beautiful. I had you take that picture of that beautiful tree down there. I mean, we have trees that are like that, but I mean, I think that's great beauty, and you know, I really prefer being involved with people more than nature. I mean, I love nature. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I figured the short time I'm here, I'd rather talk with people and find out what an Australian's all about.
Yeah. And they've mainly been activists within religion that you've been talking to in the 3 or 4 days that you've been here. Do you find much difference between the interest in that sector, admittedly a specialist, a small sector of the church because they're more intellectual, they're, you know, questioning and so on, is similarities and differences between the equivalent groups in your part of the world?
Well, what I enjoy very much is the enthusiasm of people that we met, like at Congar there, and I look forward to enthusiastic people in Perth. The American people that I know, and maybe it's because I'm getting to be 80 myself, huh? I am 80, okay, that we're tiring out. I mean, you know, it's been a long haul for Vatican II, and the results, you know, haven't always been what we'd like, and you get a little bit tired of the setbacks. You know, I mean, when I hear them wanting to go back to the Latin Mass, I can remember my saying Mass in Latin and not knowing half of the words I was saying. You know, and particularly reading the scriptures in Latin. I've never understood that stuff. You know, and you know, they'd have to retrain a whole priesthood. You know, fellas that have never had Latin in the seminary. And I see the enthusiasm of you people, and I think that's great. And I wish the best for you. Don't tire out.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
And thank you for everybody who's been supporting us at Catholica. Sorry about all the lateness and the interruptions in our schedule over the last few days. Hopefully we'll be back to normal when we've packed him off on the plane. Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.